Hello and welcome to the Underhive. We are back with some more How to Command the Death Guard. In this series, we're going to take a look at every aspect of the Death Guard. So whether you're looking to get more out of your army or you're thinking of joining Nurgle's feculent festivities, then there's something here for you. In this episode, we're continuing our look at the stratagems with the command phase stratagems, and we're going to break these down between the models that you would use them on in the command phase. So let's dive in and start with the general stratagems that aren't linked to any specific model. First up, Flash Outbreak. Flash Outbreak is a 2CP stratagem and it has a dual effect. Now, I've discussed it in the comments previously. The way that it's written, I think, could be clearer. So I'm going to describe it in the way that I feel is easiest to understand and interpret. So the default effect of Flash Outbreak, at the bare minimum, it will count your army for their contagion radius as being a turn further in the game than it is. So turn 1, you've got 1 inch, 2, you've got 3 inch, 3, you've got 6 inch, and 4, you've got 9 inch, which is the maximum. Whatever you're currently on, you will count as the turn further for every unit in the army. So I would argue that's probably worth 1 of the CP if you're using it when that is relevant for at least some of the units in the army, extending that range and getting something in that aura, particularly for the shooting phase. Because, of course, when you make the charge, which you're probably in range of course, it doesn't really matter what the range is because they're in engagement at that point. The other aspect is that you would select one model from your army and you would copy the contagion effects that that model has onto another model. Now, most of the models in your army have the -1 toughness contagion by default. The point of this stratagem is that you can target your warlord with a contagion warlord trait. So they might not actually be the warlord, they could be another character, but typically the warlord. They will have a contagion warlord trait if you've picked one, and you can copy that onto another model, which is where the value comes from. Something like Ferric Blight, giving you additional AP across a few areas of the board, or giving you Gloaming Bloat to limit your opponent's force multiplier, so denies rerolls, denies Overwatch, denies set to defend. Those sorts of things are a very powerful effect, so diminishing your opponent's ability to do that across multiple areas of the board is very strong. So firstly, everything in the army has a bigger contagion range, but you've got a duplicate effect of something that you felt was strong enough to take, which for me would be Ferric Blight or Gloaming Bloat, and you've then got 2 contagion ranges with that. But not only that, the way it's written would imply that as any contagion effects change throughout the turn, they would continue to be copied. It doesn't specify that it's isolated to at that point in the command phase it's copied. So you can double down on this with the spell Gift of Contagion in the psychic phase, and then you can add 6 inch to the contagion range of the character being copied, and that gets copied over as well. So even on turn 1, you would have a 1 inch range. That would then go up to the turn 2, which is 3 inch range. You can then add Gift of Contagion to that, so that's another 6. That takes you up to 9, and you're duplicating that onto a second model. And the ideal target is most likely something in the fast attack slot. Fetid Bloat Drone is the best pick, particularly if you've got the Flesh Mower. You want to get them up close anyway, but the Flesh Mower has a 10 inch, the Bloat Drone with Flesh Mower has a 10 inch move and fly, so it's the most mobile unit outside of Mortarion. And truth be told, Mortarion can't be involved with Flash Outbreak. I got that wrong previously because he doesn't have the Plague Company keyword or any specific Plague Company keyword because he's not part of a Plague Company, he's in charge of the lot. So that makes sense. It is a bit of a shame because he would be a good recipient of it, given that he has a default 9 inch range. However, that's kind of baked in. Yes, he has the strong contagion range, but you can't copy that. But otherwise, you can get to 9-inch, as we've said there. From turn 2, you can get to 12-inch using Gift of Contagion, which is very good, in my opinion. So worth 2 CP if used effectively on turn 2. Next up, sadly not as valuable, the Blight Bombardment, which is 3 CP unless you've got a Lord of Virulence in the army, in which case it is 2 CP. You would place a marker on the map in your command phase, and at the start of your next command phase, that is where the Blight Bombardment hits. Anything within 6-inch of the center of the marker will be taking damage in most cases. You roll a d6. On a 2-up, they take d3 mortal wounds. On a 6, they take d6. You would get -1 to that roll if they're a character, but you get +1 to that roll if they're infantry. So an infantry character breaks even on those two, as far as I read it anyway. Now, the thing here is, yes, if you hit multiple units with it and get the damage, like that's multiple smites and, could well be worth. Let's say you hit 3 units and one of them you get the d6 on, which isn't that likely. If you were to say, well, I'll pay a CP 3 times to smite these 3 units, that might actually be a stratagem that you'd pick to use. But the issue is your opponent's got a whole turn to move out of the way, and whilst it does potentially force them to pull back, let's say they are behind the marker and they are 3-inch away from the center. So they only need to move 3 and a bit inches away backwards to get out of range. Now, there is something to be said for the value of forcing them to come back rather than forwards. However, you are a melee-focused army. Ideally, you'd want to force the opponent to move forwards. Now, placing the marker in a different way might force your opponent to do that. And bear in mind, with a 6-inch radius, that becomes a 12-inch pizza, which is, no small thing on the size of a map there. But do bear in mind, your opponent has a full turn to move away from it. You're basically paying 3 CP to force your opponent to move in a particular way. Given the reduction to the CP you'll have on any given turn in Nephilim, I just don't think it's worth it. I've tried to put myself in a position where I had to do something that I didn't want to do as a result of Blight Bombardment, and I've just never found it that impactful. There are certain armies that want to leave a unit where it is and not move it, but they're at worst you're making an infantry unit -1 to hit because it's moving with a heavy weapon. I think your opponent will still take that. 3 CP to make 1 unit -1 to hit, not worth. As we've said, if you do get the damage, it could be good, but you just won't get the damage most of the time. Certain armies that bring a brigade, like guards, say, if they bring a brigade, they might not be able to get everything out of the way because the vehicles are choking up things, and if one of them's already damaged and can't move very far, you might leave the army in a position where they can't get out of the way of it, and in that case it might be a relevant pick. But it's important to know that it's spotting those moments that makes this a valid stratagem, not just using it as and when. Next up, the command phase character stratagems. So we'll start with Release the Toxins. Select one Death Guard character that has a relic, so they had to have had a relic to begin with. Roll a d6 for each enemy unit within 7-inch. On a 2 to 5, they suffer 1 mortal wound. On a 6, they suffer d3. If you're in range of a lot of models, fine. But 1 mortal wound is what you'd expect to get out of it. And 1 mortal wound is often not enough to do anything meaningful. And again, it's across multiple units. So even if you hit 6, 6 mortal wounds sounds like a good deal for 2 CP. But it would be if it was all on one specific model that it mattered on. Across 6 individual units, it's just not likely to do much. If you are in combat with 2 enemy characters that both have 1 wound left, then yeah, by all means, go for it. That could be worth 2 CP, but you probably had a decent chance of just killing one of them and, moving something in to kill the other one anyway. So it's just, for 2 CP, seems a bit expensive. I think for 1 CP, I'd probably use it every now and again, but at 2 CP, I never find myself with 2 CP to throw away on that. There would always be something I'd rather use more. Next up, we've got the Ferryman specific, which will let you add 6-inch to one aura on one of your Fetid Virion. So if you're leaning into the Fetid Virion, you may have gone with the Ferryman specifically to do this. There are a few of them where adding 6-inch to their aura really matters. The Foul Blight Spawn has a 6-inch aura, so this takes it up to 12. I just want to check it can max out at 12. Yes, maximum 12. So if you're taking the Revolting Stench that's on the Blight Spawn, might not be a bad pick on him. 12-inch of Fight Last, and you don't count as charging, is quite strong. Very strong against certain armies like White Scars. So not a bad pick for that. Also, the Plague Surgeon, having that aura of 6 up, feel no pain, and heal something can be very relevant if you've got multiple squads of Terminators or multiple characters that are Bubonic Astartes. So again, that can be quite valuable, but it does lock you into the Ferryman specific, and I don't think it's worth picking them for. But again, I don't really run many Fetid Virion ever, so I will be running a Blight Spawn from now on, but besides that, I'm not that interested in the others. However, I appreciate they are strong. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. The last command phase stratagem specific to characters is Diseased Effluence. Important to note, you can't use this on demon models, so you can't use it on the Demon Prince, and you can't use it on Mortarion. But all your other characters can. Select one Death Guard character that meets that description, and one enemy unit within engagement range of that model. Your model suffers 1 mortal wound, so if it is something that you've popped Revoltingly Resilient on, you can potentially ignore that on a 5 up. And then you roll 1d6. On a 2 up, the enemy unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. If that enemy unit is a character, it just suffers d3 mortal wounds. So again, it's not a bad shout to snipe an enemy. You got Typhus in range of a character. In the command phase, you go, right, well, I can't guarantee I'm going to deal all of Helbrecht's damage to him. Granted, Helbrecht has got a 5 up, feel no pain for being Black Templars, but you go, right, I'm going to have a chance at it. I'll see if I can deal d3 mortal wounds, probably smite him in the psychic phase, possibly Curse of the Leper as well, and then I'm confident I can do the last 1 or 2 wounds that he might have left if I'm lucky, or perhaps 3 or 4 if I'm not. So can be good for sniping tough characters that are otherwise not necessarily going to be dealt with throughout the rest of this turn, but you do want them dead this turn. But again, it's only things like Typhus, the Lords of the Death Guard, and the Malignant Plaguecaster, can't be the demons. So that's it for characters in the command phase. Next up would be the Poxwalkers. Fantastic unit since they've come down to 5 points. I would certainly recommend keeping a CP available to use this in the command phase. The Dead Walk again. You roll 7d6, and on a 3 up, you revive any dead Poxwalkers in that squad at no reinforcement cost, but it cannot exceed its original size. So there is a benefit to having larger squads of Poxwalkers, 15 to 20, because your opponent will struggle to wipe them all out more than they would if there were only 10 models, say. And then from there, you can revive up to 7. On average, you're going to get 3 or 4. So again, if you've got 3 or 4 missing from the squad, you might want to spend a CP to bring it back up to 4. Now, reviving models is always a benefit. Even in and of itself, I'm sure you can see that. But Poxwalkers really benefit from other stratagems we'll cover later in the next couple of videos. And having more models in the squad is a force multiplier to those stratagems. So you're investing an additional CP in the command phase when you know you're going to be using that squad of Poxwalkers to try and dish out some damage later in the turn. If you are buffing them, either by having Typhus nearby or with Putrescent Vitality, then again, it could be just that you're going to use them as just default damage dealers, hoping to get a bit of value out of them as chaff. Again, reviving them, always a good thing. And then the last one here that we'll cover is specific to vehicles and specific to the Plague Burst Crawler. It's Unclean Machine Spirit. It counts as being on its top profile. So you could use this on a Chaos Land Raider or Predator Annihilator or whatever else, but like we've said, I don't really recommend taking them. If you are taking them, then it's relevant to them as well. Any vehicle that is bracketable. Until the start of the next command phase, it counts as having its full wounds remaining for determining the profile. So if your Plagueburst Crawler is down to 2 wounds and it's on its bottom profile hitting on 5s, 1 CP to make it hit on 3s, plus 2 to hit for 1 CP. I don't think you can say fairer than that. I don't think it's really worth using in the mid profile. I think plus 1 to hit's probably not that important, but plus 2 is good value. You might want to use it for plus 1, if it's on the mid profile, if they're the only model that can feasibly kill something this turn, and you're not wanting to use your movement to get over towards that model later in the same turn, and you go, right, well, it's kind of all or nothing on the Plague Burst taking this model out. I need it to be able to hit on 3s to do that. In that case, well worth. So that's it for the command phase stratagems. Another fairly quick one. For me, the standouts are reviving Poxwalkers and the occasional sniping using diseased effluence from one of your non-demon characters, but the other ones do certainly have merit. Unclean Machine Spirit is certainly one that comes up every now and again when you've got Plague Burst Crawlers. As we've said, don't recommend running the other vehicles, but if you are, of course, it will come up for them as well. Well, let me know what you think about using in the command phase out of those. Not too many to run through there, but we'll move on to the shooting phase next. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time in the Underhive.